So I wanted to talk about how to come up with a exponential equation when given a either table or a graph. So if we look at this graph, we'll talk about in a sec why we know it's exponential growth. But first, let's start by writing down our general exponential growth decay formula. So it's y equals a times b to the x. We know a represents our initial value, and b is our growth or decay factor. All right, so let's look at this table. The initial value is when the x value is equal to 0. So our initial value is 1/5. So right away we have y equals 1/5 times b to the x. Now we just have to figure out what b is. So b, the growth / decay factor, in this case we know it's a growth factor because as we go from left to right with the x values, the y values are actually going up. And to figure out specifically what b is equal to, we have to figure out the common ratio between the y values, meaning from one y value to the next, what are we multiplying by? So if you notice, from each y value to the next, we're multiplying by 4, right? 1/5 times 4 gives us 4/5. 4/5 times 4 gives us 16/5. And that holds true for 1/80th to 1/20th. Well, 1/80th times 4 gives you 4/80ths, which can be reduced to 1/20th. So our b, our common ratio or common thing that we multiply by, is 4. So putting it all together, y equals 1/5 times 4 to the x would be the equation that represents this table. Let's go ahead and try another one. So again, we know it's going to be exponential growth because there's going to be a common thing that we're multiplying by from one value to the next. So can we see what that is? In this case, let's start with our b value, our common ratio from one value to the next. So what that's going to be is actually 3, right? If we multiply 5 by 3, we get our 15. 5/3 by 3, that's where we get 5, and that's going to hold true for all of these from one value to the next. It's going to be times 3 to give us this, times 3 to give us this, and so on. So that's our b value. Our a value, again, is just our initial value. So our initial value is when x is 0. So 5 is our initial or a value. So putting it all together, we get y equals 5 times 3 to the x.